So, hello everyone, my name is Laura Hassink and I head up the ScienceDirect product management team. I think I should close this one. Mohammed, just before I start, can I check whether you can see the complete screen? So I'm going to give you an update on ScienceDirect and then sneak preview on future developments. Apologies, I still have some issues with the. There we go. So let us start with looking at the published literature. On this slide, you see a graph of all kind of activities that researchers do. And as you can see, there are 4 activities that take more than 2 hours a week, which are considered highly important. And if we drill down then to kind of where researchers see challenges, it's in these 4 use cases. It's in reading research, it's in keeping up to date with their field, it's in searching online scientific literature, and it's in obtaining in-depth knowledge on the subject. So we do a lot of, we talk to a lot of customers obviously, and this is something that we hear over and over again. So from a ScienceDirect perspective, the key researcher needs that ScienceDirect must address are 4, and they are the following. So it's helped me discover the relevant information. It gives me access to the detail. So as you are no doubt aware, sometimes it's not about the article or the book chapter itself, but it's something that is in the article. It can be in a table or it's somewhere hidden in the article. With modern technologies and we can actually make that more visible and easily detectable from the article. It needs to be quick and easy, and it's not a one-off, as you all know, but it's kind of on an ongoing basis. We need to keep our customers informed about the latest developments and news. And I know this sounds, this is very familiar to you. The reason I want to point it out is that, so my team and I, when we are working on improving ScienceDirect, everything we do, we want to make sure that we address one of these 4 use cases. So if we then drill down one level and how I want to structure this presentation. So what I'm going to show you is some improvements that we made recently. There's some kind of improvements, changes, new features that we are planning short term. And I'm also going to show you a few ideas or plans that we have which are a little bit further out, so they're not concrete. I'm going to show you some ideas, some visualizations, but they're not kind of final, they're still in idea stage. But I thought it would be nice to really give you some more further insight on what have we done recently, what are we planning to do, and what are the kind of the slightly longer term plans. There are kind of some key priorities. And they drill down to the 4 use cases I was talking about. So I'm going to show you a few examples, and they are about what we do to improve discoverability, both of the content that we have on ScienceDirect as well as the platform in itself, how we allow for quick and easy access, what we do to improve how we can inform researchers about the latest developments. How do we make ScienceDirect social, integrated, and personal? So at the moment, ScienceDirect is still very much a kind of a standalone platform, so to say. And everybody who comes to ScienceDirect and views a particular article sees that same article in the same way. Whereas, of course, if we would know more about that individual, we might be able to do a better job in putting that article into context. And I'll show you some examples of what we have in mind there. Another important part, and we won't address it in detail today, is that we know that increasingly you have to deal with funding and institutional requirements, and that you have to comply with these regulations. So part of my team actually is working on, for example, providing APIs that help you to keep your institutional repository up to date, etc. not a topic really for today where we dive into detail, but if you have questions around it, I'm happy to address these. So actually a lot of improvements with ScienceDirect, they happen under the hood. So they're not directly visible to our customers, and that's also how we want to keep it. But nevertheless, they're really important. Search engine optimization is one of them, and I will address it in a little bit more detail later on. The biggest one actually that we're currently working on is something that you probably don't know, because we do it in such a way that the customers don't notice it, but we're actually currently rebuilding ScienceDirect. As you know, ScienceDirect is a pretty mature product, so we're currently rebuilding it on a completely new technology which enables us to work in a much more flexible way. It happens under the hood, so we do it in such a way that you don't notice it. We're halfway, so part of the article is already run on the new platform. We still have to do the other half. We aim to finalize that somewhere next year, and that will really enable us to then really speed up new developments and new product features. And as you can imagine, that's a major undertaking. Increasingly, we also kind of have to deal with content theft. I know that's also something that is an issue on your side. So increasingly, we see individuals and parties who kind of try to break into accounts and then can steal content. So we're really stepping up our kind of measures we take against content theft. And also, that's a pretty technical AWS multi-region. That is something that we do where we actually have kind of work with multi-regions to make sure that if somewhere a server goes down somewhere, that it can instantly be taken over by another server to prevent ScienceDirect ever goes down. Before I start showing you kind of a few examples of what we do, I'd like to give you a little bit more insight on how we actually work. So the way we work within the ScienceDirect team, and actually also on the other products for Elsevier, is what we call evidence-based product development or data-driven product development. So no product manager can just change something on the side because his or her personal preference. It all starts with the customer. So we do a lot of user testing, quantitative, qualitative, in different settings to really find out what the customer pain points are and what the needs are. And then we, let me show you that in the next slide, is we really kind of start from there and start building features, and we constantly test them with customers. So there is, and before we then put a feature live, we will test it. So we will put a small percentage of our traffic we expose to that new feature, and then we measure the difference. And again, we measure whether that particular improvement really, changes things for the better. And only if we, if we see that we can statistically see that there is a significant improvement, we will put it live. So let me then now move to some of the recent improvements that you have been seeing. The first one is that, and you probably have seen it, is that we have a new homepage. The search bar is much more prominent because, again, we heard from our users, and we also saw that in when we're tracking kind of how pages are being used, is that search is what people are looking for on the website. So that's why we made it much more prominent. Also, we moved to a responsive design, which means that if you can use it on any device, and it automatically adapts to the size of the device that you are using, whether that's mobile, an iPad, or a desktop. You probably have also noticed that the ScienceDirect green has gone, and we now have a new header and footer, as we call it. The reason why we did that is that we want to have a more aligned approach across the Elsevier product, so that customers recognize that they are within the suite of products. It's also a little bit cleaner, and and we also use the opportunity to make a few further improvements in the header. Search, another topic which is really a feature that is used heavily within ScienceDirect. We are about to implement some improvements in the quick search. So as you know, we have two types of search in ScienceDirect. We have quick search and we have the advanced or expert search. And quick search is used most. And we are going to, well, probably already by the end of the year, what we're going to do is put some features live, so some improvements live, which will make the quick search result page much faster. And also the whole user interface is much more intuitive. So at the moment, if you want to do a search and you want to refine your search with using the filters on the left-hand side, you actually have to tick the boxes and then you have to scroll down and click on filter. In the new search results page, when you click on the filter, so for example on the first one, if you want to see only the articles from 2016, then immediately when you tick that box, and on the fly, the search results will be kind of defined. We did some offline testing, which are really promising. So also the searching itself is better, it's faster. The way we're going to implement that again is very careful. So what we're going to do probably in a month from now is when you use the search in ScienceDirect, the quick search, and you come to the search result page, then there will be a button which indicates to users that we're testing a new search result page, and if they're interested, they can click on it. So then we want to test with users, okay, do they like it? Again, get feedback, and if that all goes well, we will do some further testing, and then move to this new search result page completely early next year. And we have some further plans for search. So these are longer term plans. So again, what the design you see here is not final. This is just a mock-up, but I wanted to show you. And just to give you an insight on the plans that we have with regard to search. And one of the plans that we have is that we want to guide our users better to optimize their search. So there's something that is called progressive display. So at the moment, you need to tick a lot of boxes to get what you're searching for, whereas there is a way where we can actually help and make it easier for users to actually kind of narrow down their search. So to give you a simple example, as you can see on this slide now, all that information is there. But if we would go to a more progressive display, then we would first ask, okay, where do you want to search? Do you want to search in a journal? And only if they indicate I want to search in a journal, then we say, okay, in what particular volume and issue would you like? Is there a particular volume or issue you would like to search? So you don't see all the information up front. Another idea that we have, and we're currently testing that and sit down with users to see what we can do there, is that we can help users to optimize their search. So if they, type in a particular search term, what we would like to do is actually help them to verify whether that is what they are looking for in order to improve their search and hence their search results. Again, that's a longer-term plan, but it's something that we're working on. Something I already mentioned is search engine optimization, extremely important, also from an author perspective. So if you publish your article in an Elsevier journal, it of course appears in ScienceDirect, but of course you want to make sure that your article is being found. We also know that the majority of our users, they use an external search engine like Google to actually find articles. So it's important that that article in ScienceDirect ranks highly. So we have people, dedicated people within the team who make sure that that we constantly work on, as we call what we call search engine optimization, to improve the discoverability. We also have a good relationship with Google, so we work closely together to understand their way of working, what is important to them, to make sure that we that the articles and as well as ScienceDirect in itself is visible and highly ranked on the search engine. One more particular one, and it might be that you already have heard more about it. Of course, what we increasingly see is that there are other versions of the article out there. And sometimes that's fine, sometimes that's not so fine. I mean, there are versions which are allowed to be shared, of course, but it's also important that when a user has access to the content, when you have a subscription to ScienceDirect, that people in your institution who use the external search engines immediately see that they have access to that article in ScienceDirect. So there is an initiative at what we call the subscriber links. And as I said, you may have heard about it already because we really we were working with all our customers to actually get this done. The idea is that we ask you whether you agree that we share your subscription list with Google. And if we do that, then Google makes sure that that when somebody in your institution goes to Google and does a search, that they actually, when they come to an article, that they can see on the right-hand side, as you can see on the slide, that they have access to the full text via ScienceDirect. Most of our customers already do this. If your institution doesn't share the subscription list yet, I would really encourage you to get in touch with Mohammed, because it really helps the people in your institution to actually get to the final version of the published article. And since you have access to the particular part of ScienceDirect, it's nice to indicate that easily. A little bit on how users get access to ScienceDirect and what type of entitlement we have. So there are different ways on how we can provide customers with access. So the vast majority of our users use the unrestricted IP-access, the entitlement and free content. And then you can use a username and a password-based access. So there are two ways. I'm explaining this the wrong way. So there are two ways. You can either use the IP domain address to provide access to your customers, or you can use a username password-based access to provide users to the articles they're entitled with. That works within an institution. If they're then off campus, then there is a remote access to entitlement and free content. And of course, it's always, if you don't have any subscription to ScienceDirect and you're not on the campus, there's always a guest access. There is a particular, some articles are free to read on ScienceDirect, so you can always access those. So just to zoom in a little bit in more detail, if we zoom in on the IP access option, so the unrestricted IP access gives access to everyone in the IP in the institutional IP range. So that works when they are on campus at the institution. When they leave the campus, then they lose their access because they're no longer within the IP domain area. But of course, then they can get remote access. This is easy to set up, and then you can get the institutional access for 180 days, and you can actually set this up multiple times. When they log in, when they are off campus, they need to authenticate themselves to make sure that they get access when they're off campus. There's also the restricted institutional access option, which requires users to log in when they use the institutional subscription. So then users need to authenticate themselves to get access while on campus. And of course, this is the minority of the customers who currently use that. Then it doesn't matter so much whether they're in the institution or out of the institution, because in both cases they will have to authenticate themselves by using their login details to get access. Increasingly, actually, we are working with customers to work towards a username and password type of access, because it helps it helps if we know a little bit more about the individual. It helps to prevent content theft. It's a little bit more secure. And of course, there are all types. So a lot of institutions also already use that, and they use authentication through federations, for example, via shibboleth or open access, or through the proxy mechanism. Another example of a recent improvement that we made, because we see that more and more people move to this kind of username access, password type of access, is that we made a new registration page, again, which is responsive, so it can be used on different devices. But also, what we have done is so you now need one username and password for all your Elsevier products. And this registration page makes more clear that that's indeed the case. So we make it a little bit easier for customers. It also helps them to register quicker, because we really support them in preventing any errors. So we try to recognize what they're typing and suggest improvements. This just went live, I think 2-3 weeks ago. And again, we see that that more people register because it's easier to register. A little bit about remote access, because again, this is not set up for all institutions, whereas this is something that we really know that customers like. We also know that for those institutions where and most institutions have this as part of their subscription, that it wasn't used a lot, because actually the user flow on ScienceDirect wasn't really easy. So until early this year, the access, well, you really needed to know as a customer how you had to get in, and the steps were, I have to say, frankly, very cumbersome. So we improved that. So when users take their devices, so it can be a laptop or whatever they use, when they take that home and they access ScienceDirect, then we now have a softer paywall which guides them to the best available institutional access mechanism. So we actually try to recognize who they are. So we actually went up we used to have an 8 steps of activation flow when you actually wanted to activate remote access. We now have that, we have brought that down to 4 simple steps. And if you within your institution use shibboleth or open access, then actually it's even easier, and within 2 steps they have activated the remote access option. I'm going from left to right in this presentation. I just wanted to show you some really broad examples. So now onto a completely different topic, which is books on ScienceDirect, because we always tend to talk about journals on ScienceDirect. Of course, we also have a lot of books on ScienceDirect. Just wanted to quickly talk you through a couple of new functionalities that we have on ScienceDirect. One of them is that it's now possible to download multiple chapters at one time. We made improvements to the mobile reading experience, again through a responsive design and an e-reader format. We have introduced some interactive features and functionalities, not only on the book pages, also on the journal pages, and I'm actually going to give you an example later on. So one of them is the virtual microscope. So bear with me for a second. And there is improved integration between the books and the journals, and this is something that we have started with, but that's also something that we're currently actually working on to actually go one layer deeper. So books and journals serve different purposes. What we're working on is when you're in a journal article and you find a particular definition, this will be kind of hyperlinked, and it will bring you to the definition of the particular topic in the reference books that we have available. That's not yet live. We're working on it, and this is something that will come in 2017. So again, going back to how users use ScienceDirect, if we look at kind of what articles look like, what we have noticed is that articles become more visual and interactive. So if you look at the average number of images per article, this has grown with around 12% for the last few years. If we look at the number of videos on ScienceDirect, this is growing with 20% per year. And the number of other types of multimedia on ScienceDirect is growing even faster, with 31% a year. So what you see is that authors increasingly make use of more visual aspects in their articles. And it's something that we, of course, support. So one of the things that we're currently working on to address kind of this changing way of what articles look like is a different reader pane on the article page. Again, this is not yet there. This is just idea. It might look completely different. This is what we call internally the article dashboard. And we're currently testing that again on users to see what they like. The idea is that this would improve the readability and really helps them to quicker assess whether this article is relevant. And how do we do it? By including, for example, the figures, or a short summary of the methods. In the middle, as you can see on the slide, for example, see how this article is being used on social media. But also, if that's available, more and more we have authors talking about their articles in a video, so author videos include that. And this, we think, helps users to really assess the relevance of the article and whether it's particularly interesting much quicker than they're currently able to do. Again, not yet there, but something I wanted to show you. Okay, now comes the tricky part of the presentation, because I actually want to show you something live. If it doesn't work, I will just show you the presentation, but it's nice to show it live in ScienceDirect. So this is what we call a virtual microscope. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. So in the past, as an author, if you had written your article and you used the microscope during your research and you had different tiles with the results, you had to decide what tile you were going to use. Were you going to use kind of the one that was really kind of, was giving the overview, or were you really zooming in and give give a picture and take a picture of the details? And you had to decide what you were going to put in your article. That's not necessary anymore. So if authors share with us kind of the files, what we can do is actually include the results of the microscope in the article, and it enables the user to really zoom in to the great detail and really see individual cells under the microscope. So this is the same technology that Google that you see when you use Google Maps, right? When you zoom in to really see different parts of the world. So this is the same technology that we use for the virtual microscope. As you can imagine, this has many advantages for users as well as authors. It makes it much more easier to replicate an experiment, or actually compare what if somebody sees under his or her own microscope, compare it with what the author of this particular article has seen under his microscope. We also use it a lot in our textbooks, because also for students, in the past they had to kind of redo the experiment themselves. That's no longer necessary. When they read about it, they can simply actually go to ScienceDirect and see what it looks like when they look at this under the microscope. So that is one example I wanted to show you. The other example is about interactive plots. It's a very simple one, and that's why I like it. Because, of course, when an author produces a graph or a table, you have all the data behind it. But actually, it got lost when you were submitting and publishing your article, because you made it into a flat table. And actually what we see happening is that readers then take their ruler and hover over the table to actually see what the data point is. Whereas that's actually silly because all that information was there, right, when the author was making their table. So we now ask authors to just submit the data points, and we include it in the, let me make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it better. So we actually include it again in the graph. So if you hover over, you simply see the data points, but there's also a data table, and you can save this and actually then modify it. So it's a very simple one, but what we hear from users that it helps them a lot and actually saves time, and that's of course what we want to achieve. Just a couple of more things that we're working on. This is something that is coming next year. So we also have journal pages in ScienceDirect. At the moment, they're pretty kind of simple pages, but there's much more that we can do. Again, we made the whole transition from print to e, of course, but what we're still, I think, lacking a little bit is a good browsing environment. Searching really has taken over, whereas we do know that some users do like to browse. So we're adapting our journal pages to really, I mean, around journals, because journals are sometimes also communities. We have, people who are really loyal to certain journals, provide better opportunity within ScienceDirect to see what the latest published articles are, what articles in press are, and when we go further down the line, we will be able to actually have, for example, some editor choices, articles that are particularly interesting, special issues, etc. Again, this is coming next year. And then I want to finish with some ideas that we have, and I already touched upon it when I started the presentation, on some longer-term plans that we have around personalizing ScienceDirect and actually putting ScienceDirect in context and making it kind of part of a social environment. So to start with personalization, as already mentioned, at the moment ScienceDirect looks the same for every individual user, whereas ideally you're able to kind of personalize that. So for example, say what your preference is with regard to your user interface. So do you like large fonts, small fonts, etc. But are there some publications you want to follow, for example? Or something we're working on is a reading list. If you get alerts, if you sign up for alerts, you want to have an easy way to actually say, okay, this is an interesting article. Might not want to read it right now, but that's something I do want to read when I have time. At the moment, there's no option to actually do that in ScienceDirect, and that's something we would like to be able to do. And the last example I want to give is gives you a little bit of insight on the ideas that we have to make ScienceDirect part of a kind of a bigger ecosystem and connect those to some of the other services that we offer. So, for example, the first one is about related articles. What we would like our users, if we know a little bit more about our users, for example, if we know who they are and what they have written and read, we have this feature within ScienceDirect which is called recommended articles, which is on the right-hand side of the page. And that gives recommended articles currently based on what other people who read that particular article have read. However, if we know a little bit more about you, so whether you're, you have a chemistry background or a life sciences background, we will be able to do a better job in providing recommended articles for you, because we can then throw that into the mix of all the kind of the data points that we already use to provide related articles, and are simply we are able to do a better job in providing you with recommended articles. That's one example. The second example that we're currently working on is that we want to have an option in ScienceDirect to annotate articles when you read them, kind of highlight some cases, make some notes, and then you ideally you want to save that, but also you want to be able to share that And that's of course something that is able in the free features in Mendeley, where you have kind of private libraries. So what we would like to encourage people is actually, if they're interested and want to make annotations and share that article with their colleagues, is that they are able to save that, store that, for example, in the Mendeley library and share it with their colleagues there. The last example I want to show is about authors, following authors. So again, in an article, you have the authors of that particular article, and already if you move over, you see some information about that author, the institution he or she is from, their email address. But it would be interesting because more and more of these authors also have a profile on Mendeley, for example, or they are in Scopus. It would be interesting if you were able to follow that author and, for example, get an alert when that person publishes his or her next paper. So again, that is something that we're working on. And with that, I'm at the end of my presentation, so there is now time for questions. Any questions?
Thank you very much, everyone, for the questions. If you need to ask any question, just please unmute yourself and speak out, or you can use the questions module or the chat module on your control panel of the webinar tool. Waiting for your questions if you have any questions, or you can just raise your hands if you can't unmute yourself, and I'm going to unmute you from my side.
I do see there is a question actually on the screen, whether there is a demo to describe how to set up remote access. The answer is yes, there is a lot of information available. So again, so if you have a particular question around that, or would like to get more information, you can get in touch with Mohammed, and I'll make sure then that information reaches you.
Rihab, if you are talking from Egypt, you can use the Egyptian Knowledge Bank website. You can, for remote access, you just go to ekb.eg and make or register for ekb.eg using your national ID, and then you can access Scopus, you can access ScienceDirect and all our resources that is available on Egyptian Knowledge Bank. Okay, so I think that's it. So no more questions. If you have any more questions, you can ask it on our discussion group at Facebook and facebook.com/group/. Okay, so we have another question. Does AKB in Egypt provide full access to all tools in ScienceDirect? Yes. Everything you need, or the tools that is available on ScienceDirect, you can access it through Egyptian Knowledge Bank. Egyptian Knowledge Bank is within the Freedom Collection, so it's the biggest collection of access that we can provide for our customers is there with EKB. Elsevier Africa does not work. Okay, so let me check for the website Elsevier Africa, but mainly we are talking about ScienceDirect, so it's ScienceDirect.com that you can use right now, or you can just log into the Egyptian Knowledge Bank and access ScienceDirect from the Egyptian Knowledge Bank. Okay, for any further questions, you can ask it through our community group on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/Elsevier community. We are waiting for you in the group to ask any questions. All the team is there, all the team that is responsible for Africa region is there, and they can all answer your questions, and you can join the discussion there. Thank you very much for today. As I mentioned, the recording is going to be available on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, search for Elsevier Africa, and you're going to find the recording there on the group. Thank you very much again, and waiting for you on our next webinar that is going to be announced soon. Just keep up on our Facebook group and our Facebook page, Elsevier Africa, for more announcements about the next webinars. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Laura, for this amazing webinar that you have provided today. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next time.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed, and thank you everyone for your time. Bye.